Let us begin. Let us begin with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this beautiful Sunday morning that you have given us. Thank you for everyone that's on this Zoom. I pray that you will bless Reverend Keisha as she brings forth her presentation. I ask these blessings in Jesus' name, amen. Once again, good morning. And before we begin this presentation, I'm asking everyone if you would kindly mute your mics and keep them muted during the entire presentation in order to avoid disturbances from the outside. And once again, good morning, Sunday school students, church family, friends, and everyone else that's on the Zoom. Welcome to our Sunday school community gathering, where Dr. Cheryl J. Sanders is our pastor, Dr. Alan Carswell is our Minister of Christian Education, and I am our Sunday school superintendent. Now, when I asked Reverend Keisha to share her experiences as she visited countries on the other side of the world, I heard excitement in her voice as she accepted my invitation. So it is with great pleasure that I now turn the remainder of this presentation into the capable hands of Reverend Keisha Patrick. Please receive her with a warm welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Sister Charlena, for your kind welcome. I love to travel, so I'm very excited about sharing with all of you some of my love and why I love doing it. So the title of this presentation is A World for Us to See, because I truly believe that God created the world for us to see and explore and to learn more about the world and the people that God created in God's own image. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So I'm hoping that you'll learn a few things from this presentation. I'll share, why I travel. I shared a little bit there. Some reflections on my most recent international trip to Istanbul, Turkey, and Cairo, Egypt. And I'll also discuss what travel has to do, for me, what it has to do with faith. You'll hopefully see that a little bit throughout. St. Augustine, who is one of a theologian from Egypt or Northern Africa, really, a Northern African theologian who is responsible for much of the doctrine of our Christian faith, once said, "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. So why do I travel? Well, from the Church of God history, you will appreciate perhaps that maybe when I was 12, I started attending the National Inspirational Youth Convention. My first one was in San Antonio. I hope no one goes back and sees what year that was. It was a long time ago. And every year NIYC was in a different city. And that's where I became familiar with so many different cities in the country. And I loved getting to go to NIYC and see the downtown areas of different cities. I started going with my grandmother, and then later my parents trusted me just to go along with the youth group. And so NIYC piqued an interest for travel in me. And then in college, I majored in journalism, and journalism internships take you to different cities. So I worked at Essence Magazine in New York for an internship. I did an internship in St. Petersburg, Florida, in Detroit, and in Decatur, Illinois. And I had other travels because of journalism while I was in college. And so journalism further piqued my interest in travel. And journalism is probably also the reason that I live in Washington, D.C., because it gave me the impression that to grow, you have to go. And you have to leave your comfort zone. Wherever your comfort zone is, at some point you need to leave and immerse yourself in the way that people in another city or another state or another country live. I have not lived abroad at this point in my life. I don't know if I will or not, but journalism furthered my interest in travel and in getting to know how other people live. That was started with NIYC. So types of vacations, because most of my travel now is vacation. I pre-pandemic did some business travel, but not a whole lot. So these are the types of vacations that I take. They're either relaxation, that's usually a beach, all-inclusive resort, or exploration and adventure. So exploration, getting to see a city, learn about its history. I sometimes call those working vacations, because when you get back, you need another vacation because you've been walking everywhere, riding bikes, just doing a lot of things. You need another vacation. And one of my consistent travel companions, one of my line sisters, when we're planning a trip, she says, Keisha, is this going to be for relaxation or are we going to work? Because I like to climb mountains. I like to go zip lining. And sometimes she doesn't want to do, she's like, let's just find a beach. So I always try and figure out what kind of vacation I want when I'm planning. So here are some benefits of traveling. You grow as a person, you get outside of your comfort zone. You get to know, you gain knowledge and understanding of other cultures. And I want to add to that, other religions. On this trip specifically, I traveled to 2 majority Muslim countries. So in America, I am a racial minority, but I am in the religious majority. It's a different thing to go to a country where you are the religious minority. You learn a lot, and you learn a lot about other faiths and about your own faith. And also a benefit of traveling is a refresh and a reset. Even on working vacations, just what you learn and what you experience and you see, it kind of can change your perspective and reset your mind. So that's why I travel. So this trip, I went in October 2021 to Egypt and Turkey. I started in Turkey and I went to Egypt. Now, you should know that one of my very good friends is a US diplomat who is on a foreign service assignment for 3 years in Cairo that is coming to a conclusion. Her time in Cairo began just a few months before the pandemic. It was always planned that I would go visit her, and then the pandemic hit. And last summer she called and said, come quickly because I only have 1 year left. So that's why I went in October. And so we both had desired to go to Istanbul for some time. So we started off in Istanbul, and then we went back to where she lives in Cairo, Egypt. And her tour ends this year. So she'll be back in stateside in a few months. So I have Middle East in quotes here because Middle East is a term that is Eurocentric. The Middle East consists of around 20 to 22 countries, depending on who's telling you what it is. I learned that from my niece, who's taken a political science course on the Middle East. She's the political science major at Howard. But it consists of countries that are in Asia and Africa. And I think that you should interrogate why these countries in Asia and Africa have been termed something other than Asian and African countries. And I will leave that at that. There are only 7 continents. When people ask you where you went to Africa or Asia. So, but the nomenclature is Middle East, and here we are. But they did not name themselves that. I want to emphasize that. They did not name themselves that. Okay. So here is a map of Turkey. Bear with me. I am looking at my iPad because I jotted some things down to tell you. So the official name of this country is the Republic of Turkey. It was founded in 1923 with the demise of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. It has a population of about 84.34 million. And its current president is Erdogan. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Please forgive me. He's in the news a lot. One thing I meant to mention earlier is I'm going to talk about some things that discuss history and perhaps that discuss politics, but I am not professing that this is a historically or politically accurate presentation. This is just about my experiences, and I'm trying to give you a little bit of background. So if I say something that you say, oh no, it didn't happen that way, I'm sorry. I'm sharing with you what I learned on tours or what I looked up. I'm not meaning to be a history professor today. So the currency in Turkey is the Turkish lira. The major language is Turkish. It is the only country, I believe, that is one of the countries that comprise the Middle East where the language is not Arabic, where the majority language is not Arabic. So, however, there are about 30 languages spoken in Turkey, and the Turkish is primary, and then right after that would be Kurdish and Arabic. And there are political reasons behind that you can look up on your own in your own time. And 9/10 of the population is Muslim, and then you also have Christians, Jews, and other religious minorities there. So again, I was a religious minority during my time in Turkey. Turkey is a secular country. In fact, it has been so secular at times where I think that there was a period, if it's not ongoing, where the hijab was banned. In part, what it sounds like was to kind of meld in with Western culture. So Turkey has an interest in history with Islam, though most of the people there are Muslim. Okay, so this is a map of Istanbul. It is from Turkish Airlines, and I like this map because it shows the popular tourist spots. So you can see, here's the Topkapi Palace, which we'll discuss. Can you see my arrow circling? Okay.
Yes.
We won't discuss the Galata Tower, but I visited there. We'll discuss the Hagia Sophia and the Hagia Sophia right here, and the Blue Mosque, the Sultan Ahmed Mosque. So this is a map of Istanbul. Istanbul spans two continents, Europe and Asia. Old City, Istanbul is in Europe, but the majority of it is in Asia. Turkey is the only country on the globe that spans two continents, Europe and Asia, and only 3% of the country is in Europe. So once again, this is an Asian centered country. However, the majority of Istanbul that's famous in Old City is on the European side. What separates Asia and Europe is the Bosphorus River right here. So, okay.
Basically, so much of this country, the countries were connected by peninsulas. And then when the water just kept on and washed the earth away.
Yes. I think I read something about that. So again, I'm not here to give y'all I can't give you all of the history. I'm not a history professor, but I'll share with you as much as I remember and as I know. So one of the reasons that I wanted to go to Istanbul for many years is because I heard about this Blue Mosque, and I just became interested. I don't even know where I first heard about it. And then I began to realize Istanbul is ancient Constantinople. Constantinople is famous because it was named after Constantine. It was the seat of the Byzantine Empire, and then later the Ottoman Empire. And Constantine took over and named it Constantinople. There were these various names that, because of the language and people visiting the regions and the way the city was pronounced, that eventually it became called Istanbul. And it was mostly like a linguistic thing, like people were hearing different things and it landed on Istanbul. So the Blue Mosque is a just gorgeous structure in Istanbul that is famous because Sultan Ahmed I had it built because he wanted something to rival the Hagia Sophia, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But the Blue Mosque has become more popular than the Hagia Sophia, I think, for most of us in the Western world who like traveling. So the Blue Mosque was built between 1609 and 1616 at the behest of Sultan Ahmed I. It was designed to show his strength and also to complement the Hagia Sophia. It has more than 20,000 handmade tiles in the ceiling of the dome of the big domes that are blue, and that's why it's called the Blue Mosque. But the domes also appear blue on the outside. And what really makes it fantastic and outstanding is it has these 6 minarets. So these peaks or columns are called minarets. And usually when a mosque is built, this is a mosque, a place of Islamic worship, similar to as we worship in a church. Usually when a mosque is built, it might have 1 minaret or 2 minarets. Most mosques aren't big. Some mosques, especially if you drive around DC and you see a mosque, it might be somewhere that doesn't have a minaret at all. Might not even have a dome. So, but usually in this area of the world, a mosque has 1 or 2 minarets. So the story goes that Sultan Ahmed was telling the architect that he wanted lots of gold used to build this mosque that was going to be just grandeur and fantastic. And the word for gold and the word for 6 are very similar. And so what the architect heard was 6. So he built 6 minarets. Well, the problem with the 6 minarets is that no mosque should be more grand than the Mecca in Saudi Arabia. And so the Mecca in Saudi Arabia had 6 minarets. So after the Blue Mosque was built, a 7th minaret was added to the Mecca in Saudi Arabia. So it's an outstanding and gorgeous, beautiful building. It's still used as a mosque. Unfortunately, I was not able to enter because it's under construction right now. So we just kind of I went on a bike tour the first day. I recommend if you travel, even in DC, I did a bike tour in DC recently. If you like to travel or you want to just get an overview of a city, do a bike tour and you'll get to see a lot, and you get some quick and fast information on some of the popular sites. So that's the Blue Mosque. Please feel free to enter questions in the chat. The way my screen is set up, I'm not necessarily seeing them right now, but I'm going to pause after we get to the end of Turkey, and I will I'll take a look at your questions about my time in Istanbul. Okay, Hagia Sophia. It's also called the Hagia Sophia in Turkish. So I liked this place. To be honest, I didn't really know about it before I went to Istanbul. I was focused on the Blue Mosque and learning the history of Constantinople and all of that kind of stuff. And I did not know about the Hagia Sophia before I went, but I find it very fascinating. It's older than the Blue Mosque. Let's see, was built as a Christian church more than 1,500 years today, but it functions as a mosque today. So Istanbul has flip-flop hands between Istanbul and Turkey, between numerous cultures and kings. And it sits on a major waterway, major seaport. And so it has been a place to conquer, a place to have control of. Major trading takes there, and therefore major conflict. And so the Hagia Sophia has always been a major attraction and a building that kind of denotes the strength of the city and the area throughout all of the conflicts and everything. Though it was burned down twice, and the existing structure that you see in this picture was built in 537 AD or CE current era. So it has flip-flopped between being a church and a mosque, a church and a mosque, a church and a mosque, and it's currently a mosque. So that's one fascinating thing. It's always been a house of worship, but it's up for grabs, but based on who is in control of the country or the city at the time. So this is me on my bike tour on the left. That's me at night in front of it. It's just a beautiful structure. And it's right across from the Blue Mosque. There is a square, the Sultan Ahmet Square, that separates these. So like in this picture, my back is facing the Hagia Sophia, but as I'm smiling at my friend taking the picture, I'm looking at the Blue Mosque. So it's kind of like the Lincoln Memorial, where you can look out over the reflecting pool, and on the other side is the Washington Monument. Like, you're facing one or the other, except for it's not as much distance. Like, this was an easy walk back and forth between those two very historic, very beautiful structures. Okay, now I do have a question for you. Do you see anything familiar in this picture? Feel free to unmute yourself and tell me what you see that looks familiar.
Looks like the Washington Monument.
It looks like the Washington Monument, but I promise this picture was taken in Istanbul. So it looks like two Washington monuments. You might see there's one and there's another. These are called obelisk. Obelisk. I should have done a Google pronunciation. So the obelisks are originally from Egypt. Obelisks, according to some research that I did, were originally like these structures that were erected as somewhat of homage to the sun god, but they also often appeared outside of tombs, and they're also often sometimes appeared in pairs, like at entryways to buildings in ancient Egypt. So this first one right here is more than 4,300 years old. It is called the Obelisk of Theodosius, but it was originally built, let's see, by the Egyptian pharaoh. These are pictures that I took of on this left one, I'm sorry, is Obelisk of Theodosius. It's more than 3,500 years old. This one is a replica of the Obelisk of Theodosius. It's called the Walled Obelisk, I believe. And then this one is a serpentine column that's considered an obelisk, though I don't know why it's considered an obelisk, but basically it denotes victory. So this one, the really old one that's built in more than 3,500 years ago, was built by the Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose. And then Istanbul's, it was originally 65 feet tall, and now, 95 feet tall, but now it's only 65 feet tall, because you know what? It was transported from Alexandria, Egypt to Istanbul by a sultan who was trying to show the beauty, like when he was building the Hippodrome, which is similar to the Colosseum in Rome, where they had like all these races and athletic events and chariot races and things like that. He wanted to like find things that made it stately and beautiful and like assert his power and strength. And so he got this obelisk from Egypt, like where else to get stuff from. So I don't know where the 30 feet went, but in my own imagination, if you take something from Alexandria, Egypt to Istanbul, it might suffer some losses in the travel. There are several hieroglyphics on this obelisk of Theodosius that show the pharaoh Thutmose gaining victory over one of his enemies. The next one is the walled obelisk. It was built of limestones and limestone blocks, and it was covered with copper. But right now, you can tell it's not covered with copper anymore. The copper was stolen by, guess who? Crusaders. Remember the Crusades? So this is another thing where your faith comes in, right? Where wars between religions shape what we are still seeing today. So the Crusaders removed the copper from it and used it to make coins. So what we see now is the limestone base, and it was created, Constantine removed it from Delphi and brought it over to Istanbul. So sometimes we talk about museums having things that were taken from other lands. This has been going on for a real long time. And finally, there is this serpentine column. It was erected around 478, 479 BCE, before the Common Era. As a monument to a victory where the Greeks beat the Persians. And Constantine also removed it from Delphi. So so when we look at the Washington Monument, it was built after something. It's not the first, it's not the only. There are many obelisks throughout Egypt, but what we see in our nation's capital, that's kind of like a symbol of the capital, is really an Egyptian symbol. Okay, the Palace of Topkapi. This is, on the left is a picture of me outside the gate of Topkapi, and these are some photos I found on the Istanbul Insider and Islamic History and Travel. This top picture is of the palace, and here's the gate. And this is where sultans lived. It was built in the late 1450s, and about 30 sultans lived there. In 1924, it was turned into a museum. But this wall around it was for protection. Cities and palaces were walled back then. So it's a famous building that celebrates the Ottoman Empire. Okay, took a ferry ride to the Asian side for a food tour. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about my food tour, and then I'm going to go through this quickly. One of the things that's important to me when I travel is not just that I see touristy sites, but also that I have the opportunity to learn a little bit about the culture and how the people there live. So it was great seeing the Blue Mosque and the Hagia Sophia and the obelisk and all of those things. But how do these people really live, right? What do they eat? What about them makes them Turkish? There are things about me that I eat that you can tell by my diet and the way I dress that I'm American. So you can tell what people eat. You can tell a little bit about a culture by the way they eat. So this is a coffee shop. Remember, Istanbul is on a seaport. It's a trading city. They trade textiles, they trade machinery. They have a lot of like food, like fish, things from the sea. They have a lot of exports. It's a trading center. So this area that I'm in now is right by the seaport. And our tour guide, this woman right here, took us to places where the locals eat. And so this is a coffee, this guy runs this little coffee house right here. This is basically this is his shop, that's his kitchen. And the traders just come in and he lays out this newspaper. They sit at the table. He gives them semet, which is a bread that almost looks like a pretzel, but it doesn't taste like pretzel, with sesame seeds on it that you can find on the streets of Istanbul, kind of like, like food trucks and things in New York, not like our food trucks where you go up and buy a whole lunch, but just where you buy like, nuts and corn and stuff. Like semet, you can find semet anywhere on the streets of Istanbul. It's kind of like a staple in the morning. Most of the people just eat semet and some cheese and have some tea. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of the tea in this picture. And then afterward, they would have coffee. Now, these cats were living there. And another slide, I'm going to show you a bunch of dogs. And that slide, I think, says, let's all give thanks to Bob Barker, because all over Turkey, Egypt, and most cities I've been to in Europe, they got strays. So these are like cats that he's taking care of. And this cat has had kittens. And I find that fascinating because I don't think I would sit anywhere in America where it's like some cat sitting right there. So that's kind of like, that was like a small breakfast. Then she took us to a place where we had like what they might eat on a weekend. Like maybe your Saturday morning breakfast is bigger than your Sunday morning breakfast. So I want to say real quick that in the Muslim world, but not in Turkey, because Turkey is very, very, very secular, even more secular than Egypt and other countries that are secular Muslim countries. But in the Muslim world, Friday is the day of worship. So your weekend begins on Friday and Saturday is the last day and Sunday is the first day of the work week. So this breakfast might be something that's eaten on a Friday or a Saturday. However, like I said, Turkey is very secular and they have stuck with the Western world in making Saturday and Sunday weekend days. So here you have kaymak. This is clotted cheese, clotted cream with honey on the top. It was delicious. This is minimum. It's a scrambled egg with tomato and green pepper. I have had this at some restaurants here in DC, and I've actually tried to make it myself, not knowing it was a Turkish dish before. There's rose jelly. There is pickled thyme soaked in olive oil, beef pastrami. Muslims do not eat pork, so they had the beef, she called it beef pastrami, but it's kind of like a bacon. It's their bacon, it's made of beef. And there was also a beef pepperoni. I think it's pronounced sucuk. Now, those notes that I took, I was like taking notes as she was talking. So I just really copied and pasted them from my notes page in my iPhone. Turkish coffee. Coffee is not grown in Turkey, but they do like a special way of making it, and they drink it after they eat breakfast. And so most Americans, we drink coffee with breakfast, but the word for coffee in the Turkish language actually means after breakfast. So coffee comes after breakfast, and it's eaten with this little piece of candy. And there's a whole thing where, like, if you go to a fortune teller, then she's like stirring the coffee and telling you about like your life. I have a video of that. Time's too short for me to share it, where my tour guide was giving an example of something a fortune teller might do. The thing that she found is interesting, that even though that she shared with us, even though Turkey is majority Muslim, it has several Roman Catholics and some other religions. She said everybody goes to these fortune tellers, and then when they need, when people are in need, like a Muslim woman might, find a priest. Christian woman might find an imam, like whatever your need is. So for us on this call, most of us are devout practicing Christians, more than just cultural Christians, but there are several people in Turkey, according to my tour guide's description, who are Muslim and practicing Muslim, but when things get tight, they might go see the priest, or they might go see the fortune teller, and vice versa for Christians there as well. Okay, so some Turkish soups. We were in a neighborhood called Kadıköy, which is ancient Chalcedon, I believe. It was established in like 3300 BCE, I believe. And it's a popular like popping place where young adults hang out now. It's got a lot of shops and markets. And in my mind, it reminds me of maybe like an Adams Morgan. So on the left here, left to right, is tripe soup. That's tripe soup. This was lentil soup. I didn't think to start taking pictures until after I ate all the lentil soup. It was so good. This is a garlic water that is used to put into the soup to enhance its flavor. So that's actually not a soup. And this one is sheep head soup, and it contains pieces of sheep tongue and lamb fat, and actually was really good. All right. So you learn about people from the foods that they eat, right? This is some Turkish dessert. Again, this is on the Asian side. Actually, she got this on the European side. This is actually chicken bread pudding right here. It is boiled down chicken added to rice pudding. And she had us taste it before she told us what it was. And you can't taste the chicken at all. It was very tasty. This next dessert, forgive me, is, let's see. Okay, I misplaced my notes. This is a Turkish ice cream. It's just plain. It's not vanilla, but this is something I need to tell you the name of it. 1 second. Okay. It is called kunefe, Kunefa. It's a dough with a layer of cheese in between. And they put it to a flame, and the flame melts the cheese. And I'm not someone who really likes cheese, but this stuff is really tasty. Okay, finally, this is in Kadıköy, which is where we were on the Asian side, the kind of hip place where young adults hang out. I didn't see no Black people on the Asian side, like none. In fact, our tour guide told us that when we were going into shops, people were asking her in Turkish whether we were African or whether we were from the States. So they were shocked to see us, and we were looking around like, where are other people who look like us? So I was pleasantly surprised to see this mural of Rosa Parks and Frida Kahlo. And I asked my tour guide, wow, this is awesome. Let's stop. I want to take a picture. I'm like, do you know who these women are? And she knew who Frida Kahlo was, but she did not know who Rosa Parks was. So of course I shared a little bit with her. She was informing me of their history, so I shared with her mine. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of Istanbul, but not first without showing you the dogs. The dogs were everywhere. There were cats everywhere, but not nearly as much as the dogs. And do you see this little yellow circle on this dog's ear? That is because in Istanbul, the government takes care of strays. They mark them, they give them vaccines, and they are now trying to control the stray population. And they also are now starting to neuter them. So that's why this says these photos are included with gratitude to Bob Barker's memory. People pet the strays, they feed them. They can go up to these. You can see these are outside of a restaurant. They're fat. These are the biggest strays I've ever seen in my life because people feed them and they're like community pets. So, and there was a story on CNN recently, you can Google, that asked about, that told about a dog in Istanbul that would take the ferry back and forth between the Asian and European side. They had named them, and they're tracking these, the government is tracking these dogs. So this is the end of Istanbul. We're gonna have to move quickly through Egypt. I'm gonna check out the chat and see the questions. Okay. Dr. Carswell asks, is Istanbul safe for bike riders in terms of traffic? Absolutely not. That was so scary. But the travel industry has taken note of the world and how the world travels. There are no bike lanes. It was kind of, it wasn't safe, but it was adventurous, and I love adventure. And my friend who I met in Istanbul, she kept falling behind, and she was like, wait, she was getting scared. And I'm like, yes, but it was dangerous. Probably is not the smartest thing. If you're not adventurous like me and don't have this feeling of safety that may or may not be a false sense, then you might not want to take the bike tour in Istanbul. But I was safe. I made it back alive. My friend, who was a little scary and timid about it, she did just fine also. Any seafood? Yes, sea bass is huge in Istanbul, and I did not share the picture of the sea bass, sardines. So yes, seafood is big, but again, these are Muslim people, so you might not. I'm not sure that they eat like shrimp and lobster. Not sure, but I know sea bass is big. I know sardines are big. Okay, any other questions before we move on to Egypt? So again, another thing I just want to mention, because most of us on this Zoom are probably Black. One thing I found interesting, I don't know if you remember the picture that included my tour guide, but she, to me, was a fair-skinned white woman. And she told us that in her culture, she's dark-skinned, and that this has caused challenges for her in her family life and in dating. And I just found it very, very interesting how colorism looks in different cultures. So you find out when I'm talking about the things you learn in travel, I'm like, really? Like, you're the darkest person in your family? She wasn't dark at all to me. Like, she wasn't even that olive to me. But I think that we can learn a little bit about the impact of European conquest and Eurocentric, the Eurocentric mindset that takes over the globe when you travel and you hear these stories by someone who's sharing that, yeah, I'm kind of like the Black sheep in my family. And I'm like, wow, that is just fascinating to me. And also seeing here, again, this was a secular Muslim country, but no less a Muslim country. And it's someplace where when you go there, you are aware of how you dress, because you don't want to dress in such a way where you offend anyone, because how we dress in America and Western culture doesn't fit into religious norms in this part of the world. How we dress, especially as women. I should probably make that clear. Okay, so here is a map of Egypt. And I went to Cairo and I visited the pyramids of Giza. This is the Nile River. It is the longest river in the world. And you will notice that all of the cities in Egypt are along the Nile River because the rest of this stuff is desert and almost uninhabitable, if not totally uninhabitable. Egypt is more than, I think it was established in like 3000 BC. It's always been like an established, well, for that long, it's been an established government, a body of land. It's really quite fascinating. It is one of the oldest known seats of human civilization. This is what I think of when I think of Egypt, the pyramids of Giza. I wanted to go visit the pyramids. So my friend got her foreign service assignment in Egypt. I was like, oh wow, I get to go see the pyramids. And she goes to see the pyramids with every visitor she has, and she says that that she's awestruck every time she sees them. So their beauty does not fade. There are some things that you see every day and you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. And she's like, no, every time you see the pyramids, it's something grand to behold. So I believe this right here is, it's 3 big pyramids in Giza, and they're the pyramids of a father, a son, and a grandfather. And these 3 small pyramids, according to our tour guide, are queen pyramids. So pyramids are places that were built to house the pharaoh's bodies when they died, because they thought in the afterlife they would be found. So they wanted to be protected and preserved as part of the mummifying. They were also like building these great monuments to reach the sun, to reach the heavens, to foster or to buffer their beliefs about what might happen to them in the afterlife, to easily be found. And so these are like our fascination with pyramids, is a fascination with death and thoughts about what happens in the afterlife. This is like visiting a graveside, but they are historical in part, especially these pyramids at Giza, because they are created with lime and granite, and that is nowhere to be found in the region where they sit. And so they're architectural wonder in trying to figure out how the people who built these brought the very heavy stones that it took to create them all the way to Giza, from the closest location from which limestone and granite can be found. So that's why they're architect. And then how did they build it? Like, they're architectural wonder because no one knows how all of these materials were transported or how they were built to stay together. There are many theories. I'm not giving you any of them because that's not my area of expertise. I only have a few minutes left. So here is another slide of the 3 grand pyramids. This is the Great Pyramid. I'm taking these pictures from a restaurant that sits off a little bit away from the pyramids, where you can just see this view. On the other side of the pyramids and this great Sphinx is a Pizza Hut. I believe a Pizza Hut and a KFC. Or a Pizza Hut and a Taco Bell. It's kind of fascinating to see that when you leave the pyramids. This is one of the Sphinx that's in Cairo, and it's I just like this angle here from where it is from the pyramid. Okay. This is my friend. I wanted to include at least one slide that I went to visit, who lives in Cairo now. And she was so kind to host me, and we both wanted to go to Istanbul. So she helped make this trip come to be. Right here, this is me next to one of the stones. So you can see how huge these stones are that the pyramids are made of. And the pyramids were initially coated in gold. I believe that it was France that came over and had no clue what they were and started defacing them. So just kind of like the obelisk that we saw in Turkey that was initially copper plated, these were initially plated in gold or bronze. I think it was gold though, but they were plated. They weren't looking like this. And the plate coverings that really made them majestic were stolen. Okay, so when you see people in Egypt, they normally take these pictures from a different vantage point that makes it look like they're touching the pyramid. So that's what this picture is, and that's what that picture is. Then I rode a camel, and then these are a picture of just like some camels lying down, like give me a break. And then there were a lot of horses out there too, with the people who were, we were paying to have the opportunity to ride the camels. Okay, now I didn't get to go into the Blue Mosque because it was under construction, but in Cairo, there is the Muhammad Ali Mosque, which is a replica of the Blue Mosque. And I got to see a little bit of it. This is outside the mosque where you take off your shoes. You can see I included this picture because I'm barefoot. For in Islam, you are in holy ground. You take off your shoes there before you enter the mosque. And I believe this is where they wash and get clean before they enter the mosque. So this is like the courtyard outside before you go into the main part of the mosque. So I included a couple of iconic photos because this is the mosque where this famous picture of Malcolm X was taken, and where a scene in the movie Malcolm X, played by Denzel Washington, where Denzel somewhat repeated the stance. And so here I am in that same location inside the mosque, which was also under somewhat construction. You can see that the floor is kind of torn up. So I think it had some water damage or something, and they were working on that while I was there. So that's inside the mosque. It's famous in our culture because of Malcolm X. This is a wall outside of the mosque. It's kind of like part of a palace, and it was a wall that protected Cairo in the ancient world. Okay, so the pharaohs, the Golden Parade. This is the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. Egypt's current president wanted to do something grand, so he built this new museum, and he moved the mummies to this museum. And I think in 2020, like shortly after the pandemic started, he had this grand parade of the pharaohs where the mummies' bodies were transported from the old museum to this museum. And they're very, very, very proud of that parade. It was televised all over the world, and people watched it, and it was a grand event, and they're still talking about it. So that's a picture of me outside of the sign. And this is the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, where they're bragging that, they're one of the oldest, if not the oldest civilization in the world. Now, I found it very fascinating what the people look like, how these ancient people depicted themselves, because they looked a lot like me. So I have included these slides because these people look like me. And I was like, oh, this is ancient artwork where the people drew themselves or colored themselves, and they're colored a little bit like me. And I earlier alluded to there's something around this term Middle East, where we're not acknowledging that the countries in the Middle East are in Africa and Asia. And I think that there's a reason for that. You want to do your own exploration, or you want to come up with your own theories. But I think that one of the reasons is to make me think that I'm not really reflected there, but I am very much reflected in ancient Egyptian history, as you can see by the artwork that fills this museum. And throughout the museum, I can't show you even really 10% of the photos that I took, because I'm my mother's child and I took a whole lot of photos. Okay, so this one's kind of a grim photo, forgive me. I could not take pictures of the mummies. They would move you out of the mummy exhibit if your phone came out. I saw it happen to some Americans who were down there. That's one thing, American exceptionalism. You can see it on display when you visit other countries, because sometimes it's true that we don't think the rules are for us. And they have people down there who will help you understand that they are for you. And I saw that happen with one American who was down there while I was down there. They're like, did you not understand? No phones out, like not out. I couldn't even take notes down there. So I do remember that I saw Nefertiti Nefertari, I think is what they call her. And I saw online, I found this picture of her. And this is also a different pharaoh, but this is the a mummy picture before they were transported to the new museum. But the thing that fascinated me and affirmed me and who I am as a Black person, a person of Black African heritage, is that the women, the queen's hair was mostly braided, and in their mummified state, the braids were preserved. And you can see that a little bit in this photo of Nefertari. Okay, so in Egypt, I saw all kinds of vehicles on the road riding along with cars. So I just wanted to add this because these are things that you learn about, like the culture, like really, like that's what they ride. And you also start to learn about, you know, wealth when you see these things, like why is this happening? Because Cairo is a big city, but it's kind of a poor city. It's a dirty city. It's an overpopulated city. And you see I saw more strange vehicles, but did not include them all on this slide. But you would never see this on a street in America. These are old vehicles. They're not really fit for riding on the road alongside the cars that we drive, but there they are. All right, and I think that we're almost finished. Here's another, again, in Egypt, there are strays everywhere. So here's a stray cat that I saw while I was eating. I was started just in Turkey and Egypt, I was just taking pictures of the animals that I saw. So, and I'm just giving you a taste of that because everywhere we went, these animals were. And so then there's this woman, she was a random tourist because I asked my tour guide to ask her. I thought like maybe she was from the Egyptian government, like coming to help this dog, because I had just left Turkey and I knew that the Turkish government took care of the strays, but Egyptian government does not. And people really don't care about these animals, these strays in Egypt and Turkey. They are very loving and kind, and the animals are like just part of, you know, the society. And in Egypt, they are frequent victims of car accidents, or like people were just like, these animals are in my way. And so this woman noticed that this dog had been hit, that it was injured, and she came to care for it and gave it some medicine. And I thought that was interesting. Okay. Real quick, here's where it gets interesting. This is outside of, there are several old churches in Old City, Cairo that were built during a time of Roman world rule, kind of. And above this door in Arabic is ask, seek, and knock. So basically the words from Matthew 7:7-8. This is called the Hanging Church. It's like built on top of a Roman fortress. It doesn't really have a foundation. It's not anchored by anything. And that's why it's called the Hanging Church. And here's like, you can't see it well in here, but you can tell that there's no foundation. They leave you this window, like, see, like really there's nothing beneath here. I don't understand how it stands. I think it was explained to me, but I am a lawyer, not an architect or a scientist or any of that. But, you know, you might want to look it up. It's kind of fascinating. Okay. Oh, man, I have to apologize to you guys. I failed to put a photo in here that's very important. That's outside of the Hanging Church. There's this wall right here. There's a mural of people celebrating and praising. And it is from a time where when Islam began to take over Egypt, they came in and they were going to erase all signs of Christianity, destroy all the churches. And there was a caliph that said, well, if you think that Christian symbols should remain in this city, then you're going to have to ask your God for a miraculous sign. And so the people prayed for 3 days and asked God to move a mountain. And literally a mountain moved. And the Muslim ruler said, okay, we'll keep the Christian symbols. Your God answered you. And so I'll have to search up that photo to show you, but it's a mural on this wall right here that shows the people celebrating that God answered, and God really, we talk about it. There's a scripture that says God will move mountains, but that there is a time in history where prayers of Christians were answered and God literally moved a mountain. And that's why you still see churches in Cairo. All right. So this is an underground church where Christians created because they were being persecuted. And so they moved their community underground. This is all around the same area, the Coptic church, the hanging church. And so this is what it looks like on the outside. Now you can see the cross there, but back in the day, it was just a wall. It was, discreet. And then this is me going down into the underground community. And then I'm looking back. So this is the door. This column is outside of the community. And this is a huge door that brings you inside to the underground Christian community where they lived to escape persecution and to be able to worship. This is a house in that underground community. Now, what's really cool about this underground community is it houses a cave where it is believed that Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus went to hide from Herod when the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream. And that's important because but the tour guide just says where the baby Jesus and the Virgin Mary went. She never mentioned Joseph. I think that is because Islam also recognizes Mary and baby Jesus, but not so much Joseph. So I added Joseph into this story. That's not the way that my tour guide told the story. So this is the well that the Homely family drank from, tradition holds. And this is like the entrance into the cave where they lived. And this is believed to be a cave where the baby Jesus and his parents stayed while living in Cairo. And so here's my second to last slide. This is one night I took a cruise on the Nile River. And there's the moon. I just thought that was a nice picture. And there's a quote from an author named Mary Ann Radmacher that says, "I am not the same having seen the moon shine on the other side of the world." So again, in Egypt, it is a Muslim country. It's secular, but it's not secular like Turkey is. The weekend there is Friday and Saturday. Sunday begins the work week. You will hear throughout the day the bell ring to signify that it's time to pray. You will see shoes outside of the mosque where they stop and go and pray 5 times a day. And when you travel, you observe other people's faith in action and how they practice their faith. And Islam is on to something with praying and their dedication and commitment to prayer that we can learn from. So there are things that we can learn from other faiths. There are also things that we can learn from being the minority faith when we go visit other places, because here we're in the majority and we can see the struggle that our brothers and sisters of other faiths have in being validated in who they are and in their beliefs in our country. And you experience that when you step somewhere else. So Reverend Breland was sharing with me just this morning that recently in Fairfax, there were some non-Christian holidays. I think it may have been some Islamic holidays that are being recognized in the school calendar and by Fairfax schools. And so sometimes in the Christian world, in the Western Christian world, we're like, well, that's not good. Well, how do you think that should work for Christians living in Egypt or Christians living in Turkey? Have you considered what it looks like, what it feels like to be the minority and for your beliefs and who you are to not be validated? So that's one of the things that travel does for me. It makes me think of life from different perspectives. And it also, again, as a Westerner, as an American, it makes me think, you know what? I am in their territory. When in Rome, I must do what the Romans do. Okay. Any questions? There are some in the chat. I see some chats. Okay. All right. So Sister Gwen asked, how do they handle the situation with the dogs? Well, in Turkey, the government is vaccinating them and neutering them to get rid of strays in due time. And the people feed them and they're welcome parts of society. In Egypt, not so much. The government's not doing anything with them. They're going to continue to have a problem. I did not have to cover my head in Egypt or in Turkey. In Turkey, I don't know if this is still standing because Turkey is like trying to blend in with the Western world so desperately. There, for a while, hijabs were banned in Turkey. On a previous trip to Turkey and to this region of the world, I was reminded that hijabs really began because of the heat in the area and a head covering to protect you from the heat. And early on, both Christian and Muslim women wore hijabs in that region of the world. So that's one thing to know. Like even here, you will see some Muslim women wear hijabs and it's become a symbol of their faith, but that isn't necessary. It's not required. And it isn't necessarily, wasn't necessarily started as a faith symbol. And you'll notice that several nuns wear things that look real close to hijabs. Okay, are women normally allowed in the mosque where I was? I think the answer to that is no. Because in the mosque, when people pray, the women are separated from the men. The men and the women can't be together. And that is primarily to avoid distractions. And so that your focus is on God and not on the person of the opposite sex who's catching your eye. So I don't think that where I was in the mosque, women are normally allowed. Did I pray at the mosque? I did not pray at the mosque. I have prayed at a mosque before, actually in America, when I took a world religion course when I was in seminary. When I went to the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and I visited, it's a city that's escaping me. It's not Dubai, it's another big city in UAE. When you go into that mosque, I had to be covered going in there. And I went in malls and things in the UAE, and I stayed in a hotel there. I did not stay in a hotel in Egypt, and Turkey's so secular that this was not in their hotels. But in the Muslim world, in hotels, there is an arrow on the ceiling that points toward Mecca, so that when you pray 5 times a day, you know where you should be facing, because Muslims face Mecca when they pray. Oh, Charlene, do they take care of the cat? I don't know how well they take care of the cats. Most of what I heard was about dogs, and I don't remember seeing those little tags on the cat's ears to signify that they were vaccinated.
But Keisha, what about sanitation?
For in Cairo?
With those animals in both places.
So in Cairo and in Egypt, they just strays. They don't nobody care about them. Nothing happens to them. I mean, like they're getting hit by cars and stuff. Like, why are you here? We want to get rid, they're mistreated. In Turkey, these animals are beloved. People love them and they're clean. I mean, they're vaccinated. Vets pick them up. They're checked on. But the goal is to stop the population, is why they're picking them up and tagging them and vaccinating them and neutering them. So I would say that they're somewhat, sanitation, probably not your standard of sanitation. These people, I've seen them, pet the dogs that are just living on the street while they're eating. That's not normally how most of us in our culture, which even in our American culture, how we behave at restaurants, and especially in our Black American culture. So
I remember in Paris, when I was in Paris, I had to watch out where I walked because I didn't want to step in droppings. Did you have that problem in Istanbul?
I actually did not have that problem there. I think Istanbul is the first place that I've been where I saw the government taking care of the dogs and cats, but it's all over Europe. Like when you cross that ocean, they have a stray problem. And that's why I put on that photo, we should all thank the memory of Bob Barker, because he reminded us to have your dogs and cats spayed and neutered.
Keisha, I know that when you being a Black person there, that they look at you and that they want to take pictures with you. Well, I know that when I traveled to Asia, that's what I experienced. People wanted to stop and take pictures of me because they hadn't seen Black people before. Did that happen to you in Turkey, in those places?
That did not happen to me in Turkey. In Old City, Istanbul, you saw all kinds of cultures. When we went over to Katakoy, which is on the Asian side, that's where I only saw people who looked white. Like, I was like, where are people like me? And then later our tour guide told us that people were asking her, where are they from? Are they African or are they from the States? So, but none of them stopped out. And I visited China in 2017, and those people will stop you, they'll grab you, they'll hold out their selfie stick. They won't even ask permission. They think it's their right to take your picture, and they ooh and ah. I did not experience, I haven't experienced that anywhere but China. Reverend Breland made a good point in the chat that the extension of minority faiths holiday celebration of holidays was not just for Islamic faith, but all minority faiths. And so we should care as Christians about religious freedom and allowing people to celebrate and practice their religion here in America, which is not a Christian country, was not founded as a Christian country. If you think it was, you tell me how slavery was Christian. We should celebrate and encourage people's ability to practice their own religion, because it protects, in part because it helps protect our ability to practice our own religion. But not really above that, we should allow it because we should recognize their humanity. And as Christians, we should recognize that God gives freedom of choice to choose whether and how you will serve God. And when we strip a person's right to practice or not practice a religion, we're stripping their humanity. And so I just think that's a great lesson in religious freedom when you travel to places where you are the religious minority.
Keisha, can you talk a little bit about the dress you talked about? You mentioned the dress that you wore, what you wore in both places.
So when I went to Egypt, when I was going to the churches, I didn't like what I had on. I'm gonna tell y'all, let me see if I can go back. Oh, you can see a little bit here. I had on this t-shirt, this t-shirt that I bought actually in Turkey. And these were long pants that really can be rolled up, but I had to let them down at my ankles because we were going in churches and we were going in mosque in Egypt. And in Egypt, a secular Muslim country, but in other Muslim countries that I've been to, women have to have their knees covered. And they also, like, my shoulder has to be covered. And so it's a different standard of dress. And the same, even though Turkey was cooler than Egypt was, I think it was around 50s or 60s while we were there. So you saw I had a jacket on, so that was no big deal. But I would not go to Turkey in the summertime, even as secular as they are, and wear a tank top. Because I would be offending the people who live there and their religious beliefs and how they believe women should dress. And we might think that's outdated. We might think that that's not allowing women's rights for their bodies, but we need to also learn to respect other cultures and their principles. And also in UAE is big on that. UAE is secular, but it's very religious. They will cut your hand for stealing. I also saw an American who looked a little different than me. Catch the drift. And she had on some Daisy Dukes. Right. It's disrespectful, it's just disrespectful. One of the things that I liked about Turkey was, at least while I was there, I didn't find a bunch of Western food. Egypt more so catered to us because Muslims don't drink alcohol, but you could find alcohol more easily in Egypt. I mean, easily in Turkey and somewhat and more easily in Egypt, but the Muslims don't drink alcohol. The alcohol is there for us. So, but it's very important when you are traveling to another country to know what their customs are and to respect them.
Yeah. Keisha, could you also tell us about Western bathrooms? Or did you experience, what type of bathrooms did they have in Turkey and in Egypt?
Okay, so they had Western bathrooms, the type that we're used to in Egypt. And in Turkey, they had Western bathrooms, but they also had Asian bathrooms in some places. And Asian bathrooms are basically like a hole in the ground where they stoop And it's a different experience than what we're used to in the Western world. But some might argue that it's better for your body and for releasing what you release when you use the bathroom. The way that they stoop and use this large hole that's in the floor in the stall. So there were in Istanbul, you have the option of picking the Western style bathroom, and in parts of Istanbul, especially Old City, which is on the European side, which actually was on the European side. You have the option of picking the Western bathroom or the Eastern, the more Eastern Asian type bathroom. I wanted to share, I've created these notes for slides. That's why I was looking back at my iPad, and I always do this, and then I never read the slides that I created, and I stay up late trying to work on them. But I wanted to show you something on the map of Turkey, because this is a significant place to us as Christians. So this is Turkey, this is Istanbul, this is where I was. Ancient Ephesus is, I missed it, Kushadasi. Ancient Ephesus is over in this area somewhere. But you'll see this is Tarsus. The Apostle Paul was initially Saul of Tarsus. There's a lot of our history as Christians here. There is a city called Antalya, and it is ancient Antioch. They were first called Christians at Antioch. So you can go, as you travel this region of the world, to me, another reason that it's important that we say this is Asia and we say that this is Africa is because I don't want to water down who created my history and who was major there. I don't care for the term Middle East because it's a Eurocentric term that might make me forget that the foundations of my faith are in Africa and Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I'm going to stop the share. So, I think why it's important to travel to get a better view. It changes your perspective. It takes you out of your comfort zone. And for me as a Christian, it stretches my faith. It causes me to see how other people live out their faith principles, and to grow and learning more about other faiths, hopefully should teach you more about your own.
Yes.
So that's what I have to share. I hope that you enjoyed it. I do have tons more photos. If you're ever around me, I'll just give you my iPhone and you can scroll through.
Thank you so much, Reverend Keisha. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I wrote down a bunch of notes, and that I am going to dig deeper and learn even more. But we'd like to thank you, and I would like to turn the rest of the presentation into the hands of Dr. Alan Carswell, who is our Minister of Christian Education. Thank you so much. It was excellent.
I add my thanks to Reverend Keisha. That was an outstanding presentation. I find it very fascinating to travel to foreign countries. When I do it, I always reflect on how their ways are different than our ways, and things that we take for granted in the United States just aren't so in other countries. And we, like you said, we have to respect their traditions, their values, and we don't want to be ugly Americans going to foreign countries and trying to impose our ways on their ways. I very much enjoy these kind of presentations. I remember doing some presentations, and I remember when Sister Charlena and Brother Fred did a presentation on their visit to France, similar kind of thing. So I applaud that. Thank you, Sister Charlena, for being such a capable Sunday school superintendent and putting together these community gatherings. These are very, you always come up with very good ideas for these community gatherings. Are all minds clear? I believe Pastor was on. I don't know if she still is and she wants to make any final remarks. Yep, there she is.
Oh, just to say how much, I'll just add my appreciation to Reverend Patrick for a great presentation, and thankful that you got there and got back safely, and keep on taking lots of pictures. I see your mom is on, and it's good to see you. Mrs. Patrick, bless you. We've been praying for you and your family, and it's good to see you on the Zoom, and everybody. Thanks to our Sunday school staff for keeping us informed and engaged in what's happening in the world. And so keep traveling, Keisha, and keep taking pictures, and keep sharing your perspective as you continue to grow and share with us the ways in which you're growing. So thanks again for a great time of sharing.
Thank you, Pastor. So we're going to dismiss. Service will begin in about 15 minutes. So I invite you to join the morning service through the various channels that we have, the website, our social media outlets, and the phone call. So we're going to dismiss in prayer. Let's look to the Lord. Thank you, Lord, for our time together this morning. Thank you for what we've learned, how we've been inspired, how we've been educated about different parts of the world, knowing that it's such a large world, but in another way, it's a small world. We're all passengers on this small spaceship traveling through the universe. Keep us safe, Lord, as we go to the morning service, Lord. Bless and abide as we worship together virtually. Bless those who will be there physically, Lord. Keep us together in love until we come back together virtually or face to face. We'll be careful to praise you for all the blessings we receive. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So long, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you again for coming.
Bye, nice presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.